clouds. It's not a bad day. It's not a bad day. I was worried. It's cloudy, but it looks like the clouds look nice. When I just started shooting film, I thought that achieving this perfect exposure when the shadows are exactly right and the highlights have enough detail would be really hard. Actually not the case. Actually, it's very rare when I get unusable image. 99% of the time, the images are good. Sometimes I get slightly underexposed. That's a tendency of the film, but otherwise it's not that hard, actually. The point of light metering is to figure out the camera settings that allow you to achieve the result that you want. And that's the crux of the problem. You need to know what result you want. All the images you shoot have dark areas and bright areas. Especially with the landscape. You have the sky, you have the trees, forest, the stones. But how dark the shadows should be, how bright the highlights should be. That's what we're determining when we're doing the light metering. And when I heard about Ansel Adams' zone system for metering, I thought it's something very complicated, probably for the just professional photographers. Like, I'm never going to use that. I'll just use my application, and it's fine by me. But it's actually not that complicated. It's a very elegant system that allows us to reason about brightness and darkness. It actually can be super helpful in the situations where it's a complicated, high contrast scene. I was going to record a video about light metering, but the light is so good, I need to get some shots first. A cable release and defilter. I want to smoothen this water. I use the viewfinder application to check out how the scene would look like through my 75mm. So I have the black and white film with ISO 400. I'm going to shoot at f/16, and the metering right now is 1/80th of a second. And I need to add 10 stops. If I wasn't shooting long exposure, I would be shooting 1/60th. So 10 stops, it's 16 seconds. I need to account for reciprocity. The film that I have, Kodak Tri-X, and if I'm shooting 16 seconds, I need 71 seconds. 71 seconds. Really? Let's give it a try. 71 seconds it is. Always forget to take out the dark slide. "71 seconds, man, that's a lot of reciprocity." Hello.
Hi, are you seeing orca out there?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Is that what you're here for?
No, I'm just shooting
Oh, okay.
film.
Okay. Yeah, I was out here last, I think it was Friday, and there was a...
You saw them?
Yeah, there was like 6 of them coming through. I took a video of one that was way out there.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. There was people coming down with these big telescopes. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you need a very big lens
Yeah.
to
for
shoot
sure.
them. All right, thanks. Yeah, see you.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. All right, that was it. That was the first shot. We'll see. So first of all, you need to get yourself a light metering application. Check out my video. I just recently recorded the one about the applications for film photography, and I have some recommendations there. When you choose a scene with an app, first of all, you need to choose ISO of your film. So let's say you have 200 ISO film in your camera. Then I usually choose the aperture first, because it determines the depth of field, and I need to choose the appropriate aperture so that the things I want are in focus and things I don't want to be in focus are not. So let's say I'm choosing f8. And then I just point my application with my phone camera to the scene, and the app calculates the shutter speed that is required to create the shot that I can see on the screen of the phone, actually. So I can actually evaluate the balance between the brightnesses. And if the phone is trying to average everything to try to make the picture look nice, so I can correct it and I can say, okay, please make this, I want these shadows to be brighter, so I want you to expose this a bit brighter, and I can point in the area, on the darker area, trying to force it to make the image brighter. Or I can tell it, no, I want to prioritize the highlights, so I point to the sky, and then it makes everything a bit darker and gives me the different reading. So that way you can evaluate how bright and dark different areas can be. You can kind of correct using just the application. You don't need anything else. For the most of the scenarios, this is more than enough. It works in 99 and 95% of cases. But if you want to advance to the next level, if you want to be modular about your highlights and shadows, if you want to get a little bit more artistic and you want to shoot some high contrast scene and blow out the highlights or crush the shadows, then you need some different approach, because the phone is not going to allow you to do that. So with the zone system, it goes back to shadows and highlights, how dark things should be and how bright they should be. And how do you even describe the dark thing, how dark it is? And Ansel Adams came up with a zone system that actually addresses that problem. It gives us the framework to think about different grades of darkness and different grades of brightness. So every image has the spectrum of brightnesses in it. It can be from pure white to pure black. The pure black, you cannot see anything. Pure white, you also cannot see anything. No details, no texture, just washed color. And if we take a landscape, we have a sky that is supposed to be bright, and we have the ground or the trees or the forest, which is supposed to be dark. And it's a whole spectrum of brightnesses. So the zone system divides this whole spectrum into 11 zones. Zone 0 is a pure black, no details in there. The zone 10 is pure white. And in the middle, zone 5 is middle gray. So when you're light metering, you're making decisions about placing different objects in zones. So let's say if I have a sky, I'll try to place it in 8th or 7th zone above the middle gray. And if I have a stone, I would try to place it in the 3rd or 2nd zone. And that's the type of decisions that I have to make. And the framework is very convenient for me to think about it, because it has descriptions. So let me read you the descriptions for different zones. For example, like zone 2, textured black, the darkest part of the image in which slight detail is recorded, right? And you can imagine it in your head when you're visualizing the frame. Or let's say zone 8, light as stone with textured snow. So using these descriptions, I can imagine how it would look like, and then when I'm metering, I can deliberately place different objects in a particular zone, depending on what I want to achieve. Maybe if I'm going for a silhouette, I want to crush the shadows, and then I need to place it in zone, maybe not 0, maybe zone 1 or 2 to get some slight textures. What makes the zone system particularly elegant and useful is that the distance between each zone is exactly one stop. So if you're metering and something is middle gray, but you want it to be brighter, if you add one stop, it will get into zone 6 If you add another stop, it will get into zone 7. So the decision what you make, if you get a metering for 1/25th of a second, if you want to make it brighter, you just need to slow down the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second, and you move everything by one zone. And how the actual light meter works, this is the spotlight meter. So I can point it towards an area of the image, and it gives me a reading how I'm supposed to expose it to make it middle gray. So all the light meters are metering for the middle gray. So I can set up ISO of the film and aperture, and it gives me the shutter speed to make it the middle gray. So if I point it to the sky, to the bright sky, it gives me the metering for the middle gray. So if it gives me, let's say, 500 of a second, if I make a shot with 500 of a second, the sky will look like a middle gray. And if I want the sky to be brighter, I can move it by 3 stops. So I would add 3 stops of light, meaning that I will slower my shutter speed by 3 stops. So if it was 500, I would slow it down to 250, 120, and 60. So if I make a shot with 1/60th of a second, the sky will be in the 3rd zone. Same with the darkness. If I point it to the dark area, it will give me the reading for middle gray. If I make a picture with that shutter speed, the ground or the dark area will look like a middle gray. So I can increase my shutter speed to move it to the darker zone. That's how the appropriate dedicated light meter works. The phone doesn't work that way. The phone application doesn't give you the pure reading for middle gray. The phone cameras are optimized to make a best picture. So it has limitations. It will always try to preserve your highlights and preserve your shadows. You can adjust a little bit by selecting the areas of the photograph, areas of the screen that it wants to prioritize, but it limits you in these capabilities to meter appropriately. So that's when you might want to feel like you want to go for a dedicated light meter. I'm using Ravenna Labs. It's a Canadian company. It's a modern light meter that is produced right now, so it's not the old stuff. It's pretty advanced, actually. It has the zone system built into it, so I can point and choose the area, and it asks me what zone I want to place it in, and then it gives me the reading right away. I don't need to calculate in my head. But if you want to see a review about it, Nick Carver has a review about that light meter. So go check out his channel. He's a fantastic YouTuber and fantastic photographer. So as I said before, the zone system is useful when you're trying to do something extraordinary, something special. If you want to crash the shadows, if you're shooting, for example, into the sun, the metering with the phone is really hard. The application can go a little bit crazy when it's such a huge contrast. It's impossible to balance the exposure. So you might want to use the spot meter and meter for shadows, and then decide how dark your shadows you want to be. For example, if you're shooting the seascape, you can meter the water and then decide how dark it should be in your picture. If you wanted to have slight details, put it in zone 3. And if you wanted to have some texture, you put this in zone 2. And then, what can you do? The highlights will blow out because the range is so huge. You won't be able to fit everything. Or if you want to prioritize for the highlights, you meter to the sky. You decide how bright it should be, how much detail you want to see in the sky, and then everything else will look like it looks. You cannot control the spectrum in nature. Well, you could if you use a filter, a gradient filter. You can actually reduce the brightness of the sky, for example. So let's do the experiment and see. Let's use the application for light metering and shoot this into the sun. It's a high contrast scene right now. So I'm using ISO 100. I'll be shooting f11. So it gives me the reading of 1/80th of a second. So I usually round it to overexposing, so it's going to be 1/60th of a second. Okay, now let's do the light meter. We have the ground in front, like on the foreground of the image. In the bottom part of the image there's a ground. I think I'll put it in zone 3. Let me see. So the zone 3, what's the definition? Average dark materials and low values showing adequate texture. I think adequate texture is fine. Let me change the ISO. I have ISO 100. So let's meter for the zone 3. And with F11 it gives me 1/50th of a second. So since I'm always rounding it to overexposing, I'll use 1/30th of a second for that shot. Well, I guess we'll see the results when the film gets developed. The film was developed. I got it back from the lab and scanned with my mirrorless camera Canon EOS R. So we're ready to take a look at the images side by side. There was a slight problem with the film back, the uneven spacing of the frames, so two frames overlapped slightly. I had to crop both of them. Luckily it wasn't a big problem, but you'll notice that cropping is slightly different on these two frames, even though I was shooting using a tripod in exactly the same scene. So let's take a look. Looking at them side by side, the image number 1 is on the left. It's made with the phone application, and the reading was 1/80th of a second, and I rounded down to the slower shutter speed 1/60th of a second. Image on the right is the second one, metered with the spotlight meter, metering for the ground. I was trying to put it in zone 3, and I got the reading of 1/50th of a second, and I rounded down to 1/30th of a second. Again, towards overexposure. With the negative film, it's a common technique. That film can tolerate overexposure much better than underexposure. If you look at the reviews and the experiments with latitude, negative film can produce the really good images, even +2, +3, and +4 stops over the base metering. But the underexposure can ruin the image even if it's down by 1 stop. Between these two images, there's nothing surprising necessarily comparing them, because the difference is 1 stop, 1/60th and 1/30th. With the spotlight meter, with the image on the right, I was trying to put the ground and the stones in the zone 3, which is supposed to be average dark materials showing adequate texture. And I think it's close to my perception of that description. Granted that I've slightly overexposed it by at least 1/3 of a stop. Maybe it's a little bit brighter. I could make it slightly darker if I wanted to. But the image on the left, which was metered with the phone, I think is slightly too dark. And the thing, again, with the negative film is that you would prefer to overexpose it and then make it darker in Lightroom after scanning, instead of risking underexposing it and losing shadows and getting a lot of grain and losing contrast in shadows. So I think with the light meter in this particular case, I was much more precise and intentional. I thought how I want the image to look like, and straight out of the camera I get the result which is closer to how I imagined it in my head. Granted, in this particular situation the scene wasn't extremely complicated. The sun was behind the clouds, so the light was diffused, and I think the difference between shadows and highlights wasn't extreme. But in this situation, if there were no clouds and sun was shining straight into the camera, the difference between the dark and bright part can be extremely high, so that something has to go. Either you lose shadows or you lose highlights, and the spot meter gives me control over what do I prioritize in the frame. And with the phone metering, of course, I can break it, add stops up or down, and later see what result I want better. But granted that the film is getting more and more expensive, I'd prefer to have a one shot, make it right, straight out of the camera, and avoid bracketing and wasting 3 frames on one scene. With the spotlight meter, when I'm metering for a particular area and I'm choosing the zone intentionally, I'm in much better position to get the frame that I want, and I don't need to guess and bracket. There you go. That's my analysis of the results. So I definitely recommend you looking at the zone system. It's not that complicated. If I manage to figure it out, you will be able to. And I hope that it will allow you to be a bit more intentional about your photography and your shots, and a bit more confident when you take a picture. During that same photo shoot, I did more shots, found a couple interesting scenes, experimented a little bit with a 10-stop and D-filter. So if you're curious about the results and if you want to see the photos that I ended up with, keep watching the video. I'm actually here to shoot these things. They look awesome. I've been here before. I shot them with 35mm color and black and white. And now I have medium format 6x6 with black and white. The trick is to place them in the middle. I think they should work well with a square format. I'm getting my 150mm. Should allow me to zoom in quite nicely. Changing lenses in the field, man. Okay, I want to try another one. The long exposures. F11, it's 1/60th of a second. One 1/60th of a second seems about right. I'll do 125. With 125, I need a count for 10 stops. So 8 seconds. With the reciprocity calculator, for 8 seconds, I get 24.6 seconds. Well, let's give it a try. Let's do 25 seconds. Ooh, I did a stupid thing. Forgot to put the ND filter. That one is ruined. Let's do another. So 1/60th of a second, F11. I decided to make a couple shots with 10-stop and D-filter again. Let's double check. Let's do 125th, right? So if it's 125th, then it's going to be 8 seconds. It's going to be 8 seconds. So I have Kodak T Max now. Kodak T Max, let's see what the reciprocity is. 8 seconds. With the Kodak T Max 100. T Max 100. No, it's actually not that bad. Just 11 seconds. Okay, let's do 11 seconds. do 1/25th of a second to make it darker. Is it the last one? It's not the last one. Is it moving? No, I'll do it again. It's not moving. Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I'm not sure what I got. I think the back malfunction. I don't know what I have. I don't know what will I have as a result. We'll see. Oh, that's the gist of shooting with film, right? Don't know if you get anything good.